What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we are going to be looking back at my 2025 TBR and doing a bit of an update. So for those of you that have been following the channel for a while, early last year, I put out 25 books for 2025, and I thought that it would be fun, entertaining, and condemning to show you guys which books off of that list that I actually read and the ones that maybe fell by the wayside a little bit. Spoiler alert, it's pretty bad. So for your entertainment and amusement, I am going to have a counter somewhere right here to keep score. And yeah, maybe you guys will get a good laugh out of this. And at the end, there's a few things that I do want to sort of just wrap up and discuss with you. You know, I don't normally be like, watch to the end, but if you're going to skip ahead, make sure you watch the end because there are some things that I think maybe some of you might be interested in. But I did read around 57 books this past year, so you'd think that clearly I got to all 25 books that I had on my TBR this year out of 57, and let's just see what happens. So without any further ado, let's look at book number one. Number one is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. So Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I did not read this book last year. So mark that as one for the nose. Yeah, I did not read Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, predominantly because of how long it is. It is a very, very thick book. And this year was sort of taken over by Sun Eater, which most of you know. I knew it was probably going to take me all month to read Lonesome Dove. I also didn't want to rush through it. So I wanted to make sure that I gave it ample time and consideration because I've heard this is one of the greatest books ever written. So rather than try to force it in somewhere or whatever, I wanted to make sure that I read it when I was in the mood to read it. But on top of that, this is going to be one that I read with a special guest probably this year. So that's a video that should be coming out immediately after this one. But yeah, as far as the scoreboard goes, I did not read Lonesome Dove. Book number two is Malice by John Gwynne. Malice by John Gwynne. Oh, yeah. So the original plan was to read one of these books per month until I completed the series. So it would have been 4 months. These are pretty thick books. I was planning on reading this, I believe, in February, starting in February or March of 2025. And I hit a big reading slump, didn't want to read any epic fantasy. And on top of that, I had read some other John Gwynne and wasn't completely satisfied. So it sort of sucked the wind out of my sails a little, so I just sort of kicked the can down the road. But now I am planning on reading Malice probably next month. But as far as the scorecard goes, I did not finish Malice, but I do plan to read the entire Faithful and the Fallen series this year, pretty early on actually. So it's my priority series of 2026. So book number three was, all right, next up on the list is The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. So The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams, I actually started listening to this book and stopped because there's so much nuance there that I didn't want to listen to it. I wanted to read it physically with my eyes. And I have all of the books. I don't know if you guys can see them, but they're actually right here on my bookshelf, the Broken Binding editions. And the cover of The Dragonbone Chair is my favorite cover they've ever done. And it is what motivated me to read the series. But they are so long. You guys know my year was kind of taken over by Sun Eater, and that became my priority series. So I'd planned on sort of seeing if I could read Dragonbone Chair in December and just kick the can down the road with this one as well. So I do plan to start this series this year. I doubt that I will complete it, but as far as the scorecard goes, yeah, this is another miss for me, which is not good because that makes 3 out of 3 books so far I did not read. So book number four is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I read this one. So finally, I'm on the board. So this was a book that I read as a buddy read with my bride. We both absolutely loved this book. We did a full review for this. So if you want to see all of our thoughts and opinions, it's over there. I did sort of play devil's advocate with our review because of how beloved this book is, in particular by my wife, which I absolutely loved it too. It's an all-timer. It's in my top 10 books. It's probably in my top 5 books of all time. But there were some things that I wish were different. They're little nitpicky things overall, but there were some things that I wish were done just a little bit different. But as far as my 2025 TBR goes, I got this one. Book number 5 is The Will of the Many by James Islington. Yeah, The Will of the Many, I did not read. So that's another swing and a miss. So I did not read The Will of the Many. I was hoping to read it around September, October. There were a few wrenches that were thrown in there. One being that I got to interview Larry Correia, and I wanted to make sure that I read Dust Sacrifice and Academy of Outcasts prior to interviewing him. So I had to kind of drop what I was doing and read those very quickly because I only knew about it. I had like less than a week of a heads up as far as like, and that's not a knock towards them or anything. It's just, they were like, hey, well, this is when he can do it. So, and I was like, yep, I'm going to make it happen. So I flew through those two. And so I had to kind of pump the brakes on everything else. So Will of the Many took a back seat. So October was my palate cleanse month, and I'm glad that it was. But because I took that month to just sort of completely mood read and read one-offs here and there, I pushed Will of the Many back to November. That was going to be the book I was going to read, but I wanted to read Sun Eater, so I waited. I read Disquiet Gods, and so it just kept getting pushed back. I do plan to read Will of the Many this year at some point, probably read both that and Strength of the Few, but as far as 2025 goes, I did not read it. So book number 6 is going to be Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. Dragon Mage. Yeah, this one was another one that just intimidated me by its size. Also, I had a little bit of fantasy burnout this past year. It's not a book that has been a huge priority for me. My wife did buy this for me for Christmas in 2024, so that's why I was hoping to read it this past year. However, I just kind of wasn't in the mood for that type of a book. I do hope to read it this year. So whenever I get in the mood to read some sort of like epic dragon story that I know I could read one book and be done, this is going to be it. Does that mean it's a priority for me for next year? No. But I do know it's one of those books that I have on my shelf that I know will always remind me of why I love fantasy. And so kind of when I get in a reading slump and I'm looking for something that's going to remind me of my love for fantasy, that'll be the book that I reach for. But as far as 2025 goes, again, it's another miss. Book number 7 was... All right, book number 7 is actually a trilogy of books, and it is The Eisenhorn Omnibus by Dan Abnett. So the Eisenhorn trilogy by Dan Abnett. This is a trilogy in the Warhammer universe, and this is sort of where a lot of people tell you to start because you're kind of learning the history, the magic system, all of that. You're learning the hierarchy of like the politics and those kind of things. You're learning all of that alongside a character, very similar to how you learn the magic system in the world of Mistborn, because you're kind of seeing through the eyes of Vin. It's in a similar vein. You're learning all about the Warhammer universe while being told this sort of Sherlock Holmesian murder mystery type of story in this trilogy. I did not get to it. I really, really wanted to get to it, but 2025 was consumed with Sun Eater, and that was my primary sci-fi story that I wanted to get to and get through. And so I just kind of wasn't in the mood to pick up another huge, epic, vast sci-fi series. So when I wrap Sun Eater up, I'll be jumping into Eisenhorn pretty quickly this year. But again, for 2025, it's another miss. So things aren't looking good. So let's look at book number 8. Book number 8 is going to be Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Yes, I read this one. So there's another one for me. I'm on the board again. So all hope is not lost yet. But Jurassic Park, fantastic book. I had a couple of issues with it. I think there are things about the movie that I prefer, and there are things about the novel that I prefer. But as far as 2025 goes, I did read this book. Book number 9 is going to be one that I'm not going to label as a priority series just because I know how I am with different series, but it's going to be Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Wheel of Time, book 1, Eye of the World. So my plan was to read Eye of the World in December of 2025 and read one book per month until I had completed the series. And there were a few factors that made me just sort of put it off. And it's not one that I am extremely motivated to start. So I am putting the series off until I just really feel like putting myself up to the challenge of going one book per month until I finish the series. So it could be another year or so, but I've got them and they're waiting and they're on deck, but again, it's not a priority. So for 2025, it's another miss. Book number 10 was the next Dresden book, which we now know is 12 months. And so this one, I'm going to kind of give it a pass. I'm going to say count this one as a draw because the book was not released. It does, at the time of recording this, it does come out in 2 weeks, and I plan to pick it up on release day. So I do plan to read this. But as far as 2025 goes, yeah, I didn't read it because I couldn't read it. Book number 11 is another book that I do not have a physical copy of. And really, you could put one of two here. It's either going to be Song for Our Bone by Guy Gavriel Kay or Tigana. Yeah, so Guy Gavriel Kay. I did not read Tigana or A Song for Our Bone. I was actually talking to Samwise about June or July, and we were going to do a buddy read of GGK. And he was in the middle of a book. And so we had kind of discussed maybe reading something that's not as mainstream. And so we talked about Under Heaven by Guy Gavriel Kay. And so while he was reading that, I'm a slower reader. So I decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and start it and see what it's like. And I got about 50 to 100 pages in, and it just wasn't working for me. So I kind of let Sam know before we both decided to dive headfirst into it. Part of it is his writing style, but it just, I think, I was sort of having a fantasy fog, and I wasn't really prepared for it to be like historical fiction fantasy, which it kind of is. But I will say, for anybody that loves Tolkien, I think you'll love GGK, and you can definitely see the similarities and comparisons there. I'm not a huge fan of Tolkien's prose, personally. I just don't think I'm smart enough to appreciate it completely. There's often times when I would read Lord of the Rings, I'm like, let's keep the ball rolling a little bit. We don't have to sit here and describe this tree forever. So with GGK, part of it was my mindset, part of it was the prose, and part of it was my expectations. So after about 50 to 100 pages in, I was like, yeah, this isn't really working for me. And so we just kind of scrapped it, and we said we'd come back and do a buddy read of something else, which we need to do soon. So I'm going to say that I did read GGK. I did not finish it. And it just wasn't my thing at the time, but I do plan to read either Tigana or A Song for Our Bone pretty soon. I don't know what that means. Does that mean this coming year? I don't know, but I'm going to give myself a check. You guys may, if you're keeping score, may say I didn't read it, but I read enough to know that that book in particular didn't work for me. Book number 12 is another one that I do not have a physical copy of, but it is A King's Radiance by Luke Scholes. Yeah, so A King's Radiance by Luke Scholes. This is the author of Soul Cage, which I have right here, and I've talked quite a bit about. Really like Soul Cage, and this was going to be sort of my indie book that I wanted to get into, and A.M. Wiley just sort of stole all of the indie thunder for me this past year. I wanted to read some indie. I didn't want to read a whole lot. It wasn't like I was avoiding it, but I wanted to actively read some, and after reading Weird Space, I just couldn't get enough of Mr. Wiley's work, and so some of the other indie published stuff took a back seat. And I don't think the series is finished yet, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe when that wraps up, it may be the series that I go to. I'm not sure, but the covers are sick. And he just did recovered some of his books, especially the first one. So they look really, really cool. I do plan on getting them. But again, they're not a priority. It'll be one of those when I'm just sort of in the mood for something like that. Because I've heard it's sort of Mistborn meets Dark Souls, which sounds pretty cool. But as far as 2025 goes, I didn't read it. Now, book 13 is going to be The Fury of the Gods by John Gwynne. Fury of the Gods by John Gwynne. I did read this one. I read this one and I wasn't blown away by it. It was fine. I actually read about 80% of it and stopped because I was just bored. So I looked up a synopsis and was satisfied with what I read. It was exactly how I thought it would end after reading 80% of the last book. And so I was completely satisfied with just kind of stopping there. It's a very good series, but it's not the best that I've ever read. And after reading some of these crazy epic fantasy stories, I just have kind of lost the desire to spend a lot of time in a book or series that just isn't really working for me. So yeah, I did read it. It didn't blow me away. I'm not trying to scare anybody away from it. It's Viking fantasy and it's done really well. It just wasn't necessarily my thing. But as far as 2025 goes, I did complete it. All right, book 14 on this list is going to be A Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. I did not read this one. It's another one of the series that I sort of kick the can down the road for a few reasons. But whenever I do get in the mood to pick up something that is Brandon Sanderson-esque again, this will be the series that I reach for. But as far as 2025 goes, yeah, didn't read it. All right, book 15 is going to be The First Binding by R.R. Verde. Yeah, The First Binding by R.R. Verde. Yeah, I didn't get to this one. This is another book that I just was intimidated by because of the size. So this is one I was going to read in the fall, and I kind of hit a reading slump. Also, you guys know I took October as sort of my palate cleanse month, which I'm glad that I did. So I do plan on reading this, and whenever I do get in the mood to read something that is very Name of the Wind-esque, this will be what I reach for. But yeah, that thing is a tome, so I'm not in a rush. But yeah, as far as 2025, I did not read it. All right, book 16 is Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. So yeah, I didn't get to this one either. I planned on reading this in December. You guys even voted for me to read this book, and I still didn't do it. However, I do plan to finish it probably either the end of this month or the beginning of next month. So I am going to read it either at the end of January or beginning of February. So it will be a priority, but 2025, didn't get to it. Book 17 is not out yet, but it will probably be a day one read for me, is Of Empires and Dust by Ryan Cahill. And just to put it short and sweet, I didn't read it. And so there were some content things I was a little worried about. And so I waited for a few friends of mine that read it that gave me the green light. So I do plan to jump into it. I just don't know when. It's not a priority, but when I feel like, hey, I got to wrap this up, that'll probably be when I reach for it. I don't know when that's going to be, but did not get to it in 2025. Book 18 is another one that I don't have a copy of, but it is Wayward, which is book 1 in the Wayward Pines series by Blake Crouch. Wayward by Blake Crouch. I read this one. Yes, so check mark. So I did get to Wayward. Loved it and reviewed it. So if you're interested in my thoughts, you can go look there. Yes, absolutely love that book. I read half of book 2 and DNF the series. Just, to put it short and sweet, it got very sexually explicit for me. So I read a synopsis of books 2 and 3 and was glad that I stopped. I think that you could read book 1 and be satisfied. The ending from what I read was fine. I really liked book 1. And just made me realize how much I enjoy Blake Crouch, but Blake Crouch does tend to always put something explicit in his books, but you can count this one as one that I read in 2025. Book 19 is going to be A Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan. I did not read this one, and it's for one reason alone. Some people are going to think this is a stupid reason, and it may be, but it's because I opened it up and it talked about Hadrian, and I could not read another book series about Hadrian. Now I understand, but I'm so in the throes of Sun Eater, and I'm wrapping up Shadows Upon Time at the time of recording this, that I just couldn't get into another series about Hadrian without finishing a series about Hadrian. So this is going to be a priority series for this coming year, but in 2025, I did not get to it. Book number 20 is another one that is about to come out, but it is Grave Empire by Richard Swan. I did read this book. I DNF'd it pretty early on. So I'm going to give myself a check here. And this one I was probably a little harsh on, but I did attempt it at least in 2025. So I'm going to go through the next 5 pretty quickly. Book number 21 was The Sword of Kaigan. I didn't read it. Book 22 was Unsold by Will White. I didn't read it. 23 was City of Thieves by David Benioff. I didn't read it. Book 24 is Pilgrim's Progress. I didn't read it. And book 25 was The Hiding Place, and I didn't read it. So it's a pretty atrocious list there. Out of 25 books, I read 6 books, and I had one that I couldn't read because it wasn't out yet. So that's pretty bad. Now, this is why I wanted to make this video. Number 1, I think that because I had started the channel early on last year, that I felt like I needed to do something to draw the audience in. Do something that was going to be like, oh, this guy is serious about reading because he's got all of these huge series on here. He's got Powder Mage and Lonesome Dove and Combat Codes and Will of the Many and Jurassic Park and Wheel of Time. He's got all these things that he's going to get to. And I, for some reason, I think in my mind, I was like, okay, if people see that, then they're going to keep coming back to the channel because they know that I do take reading seriously. The problem is that I don't take myself realistically. So after looking at the list, I realized pretty quickly that I was not going to get to these. So why am I making this video when I only read a few of these books? It's for a few reasons. Number one is that I think it has helped. It's going to hold me accountable. It's going to hold me accountable when I say I'm going to read something and I don't. It's just something for me personally. I do want to actually do the things that I say that I'm going to do, or at least attempt them, and be more transparent with you guys. Number two, I think it's going to make me set my expectations more realistically. It's going to make me look at my list and go, am I really going to read that? Or is that something that I want to read because I think other people are interested in it? I don't want to read books for that reason. I want to read books because I enjoy them and because I want to read them. So it's going to be very rare that I pick something up just because somebody else wants me to read it. So I think this is going to temper my expectations moving forward. And the third reason is I wanted to show you guys that it's perfectly okay that I didn't read these books. It is perfectly okay that I did not read all 25 of these books. As a matter of fact, if I would have read all 25 of these books, I probably would have had a terrible year because I would have hate read most of them. So if you guys are setting a TBR for yourself, whether you make YouTube videos or not, you're just reading for the sake of reading, and you're like, well, like I was early on, well, I'm going to go ahead and make myself a TBR and have a structured list and blah, blah, blah. But then you don't get to something, don't be discouraged about it. Don't go, oh, well, I had planned on reading. They're at the end of the day, they're just books. And not only are they just books, but most of us read sci-fi and fantasy. So they're just books about dragons and wizards and sometimes space wizards and aliens or whatever. My friend Josh over at Ari Over Books said we read books about guys that wear funny hats. That's pretty much it. So maybe let's just not take ourselves super seriously. And so this is part of the reason why I wanted to make this, was to hopefully encourage you guys to not be discouraged just because you didn't read something or because you read something and didn't like it when everybody else did. Who cares at the end of the day, right? I mean, they're books. They're meant for our entertainment and enjoyment. They are not, I don't think they're going to be completely life-changing. Every now and then you may read a book that changes the way you see things. And I think that is part of it. Is it's definitely going to open up your perspective. It's going to allow you to empathize with people a little bit better. It may also open your eyes to other perspectives that you otherwise wouldn't have insight to. So all of those things are great. There's a lot of benefits to it, but I don't think we should feel disappointment or shame because we didn't but just because we didn't read a particular book or series. So I hope you guys had fun with this. Here's the scoreboard. It is an absolute atrocity on my part. But with that, I do hope that probably in the next day or two, I will be posting my 26 books for 2026. I think this has really helped me set myself up for success for this year, seeing how poorly I failed last year. So I hope you guys got a kick out of this. If nothing else, maybe you got a cheap laugh at my expense. And if nothing else, my video quality has went way up. So I think that's an objective truth that I can say, because my video quality before that was bad. So again, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.